Ohio State versus Oregon, the rematch of all rematches getting ready to take place in the second round of the CFB inaugural 12-team playoff here, Chris. Look, I'll start us off and take Ohio State here. Look, in baseball, a lot of times teams don't like having buys because they, in the playoffs, especially because they get out of rhythm and they get clipped early in the playoffs. Now, obviously, football is more physical than baseball, but I do feel that a team like Oregon, who was riding a huge wave of momentum coming into this game, could have a little bit of some rust having that long layoff there that they've had for the last few weeks, right? Meanwhile, you look at Ohio State, who looks like not only the most talented team in the country, but also the most pissed off after losing to Michigan to end their season, the regular season anyways, right? Have I been sold on Will Howard as a quarterback this year? No, I haven't. But look, he played like one of the best quarterbacks this weekend when they manhandled a very good Tennessee team, especially on the defensive side of the football. I thought maybe besides Cade Klubnik, he actually did the most this last week against that Tennessee team. Look, if he's off in this one, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins can still keep him in the game as well. And you got to look at Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith's been one of the best true freshmen right up there, right next to Ryan Williams this season as far as a receiver is concerned. The guy is just a walking touchdown waiting to happen. He's been able to outshadow Emeka Ibuka and some of those other guys that they've had over there at Ohio State this year, which is not an easy thing to do. So he looks like, for all intents and purposes, the next great Ohio State wide receiver. On defense, it's simple, easier said than done. Ohio State needs to get the Dillon Gabriel and make his life a living hell in this one. They also have to limit Jordan James to under 100 yards. Chris is going to probably talk a little more about that. Last time they played, they weren't really able to do that. We know Oregon has a lot of good playmakers on their side of the ball. Can Ohio State limit them in this one and be able to do enough to win the game? That's going to be the big question coming into it. Chris, I want to hear a little more about Oregon.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Oregon 13-0, number one team in the country. Only Power 4 school not to lose a game this season. Obviously, the bye week, I think, it could be a little rust here. It's always good to have a bye too, though, rest some players up if you got any injuries. But as far as offense goes, Oregon's been elite on offense. We knew that, averaging 35.9 points per game. That's top 10 in the country. Obviously, we talk about him all the time. Dillon Gabriel. This guy was a Heisman finalist this season, had really good numbers, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Can't complain about that. You talked about it. I love this kid. I think he's underrated. Jordan James, one of the best backs in the country, in my opinion. Kid has over 1,200 yards on the ground. He averages over 5 yards per carry and 15 touchdowns as well. These guys at wide receiver, this core they got is elite too. I would say they're probably right behind Ohio State as far as receiving cores go in the country. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, these guys are all great. And Ohio State had some problems with these guys the last time they faced. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. Tight end Terrence Ferguson, he's a really good weapon at tight end that nobody talks about a lot either at that position. As far as the defense goes, they give up 17.8 points per game. This defense is pretty solid. They're number 12 in the country as far as that goes. Derek Harmon, defensive lineman. He's a super stud. He'll be a first rounder this year in this year's NFL draft. He's a big anchor on that front line. Bryce, Butcher, linebacker. He leads the team with 87 tackles. Really Oregon's pretty loaded across the board on both sides of the football here. I mean, it's really no different than Ohio State. These two teams got tons of NFL talent all over the place. So I'm going to get right into it here. My keys to the game. Look, the last time, these two teams met in Eugene, it was a great game. Came down to the wire. If it wasn't for Will Howard and probably a little bit of a clock mismanagement there at the end, Ohio State could have won this football game. I mean, it was really a coin flip. I believe they're very evenly matched. And I see this one being, honestly, the same way. I actually think whoever wins this football game will find themselves in the national championship game, just in my opinion. And it's kind of crazy. You look at the line here. Ohio State is actually favored by a field goal right now, currently on the books. Obviously, I think some of that is recency bias with the big win over Tennessee last week. But not so fast here, man. I'm going with Oregon again. I know this may shock some people, but I've been high on Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Christian knows that. I think they're the better team. I think they got the better quarterback here and, honestly, the better coach. So give me Ohio State 31, Oregon 34, and a classic.
Yeah, Chris, I've got Ohio State 38, Oregon 35. Ryan Day has to win or else face being fired. So let's see what they can do.